Picking up where we were last talking about regarding how speech has become the fourth S, along with sex, sustenance, and shelter, and how it has in fact become the fourth measurement, the fourth M, that rather than the kinds of basic spatial measurements that we all must have to survive in the basic primary world, that now speech has become its own singular way to measure life. And we were, a little more specifically, we left off almost pointing out how speech can become, if you can see it, this does not actually cover it all, but it is an operational description that speech has become its own justification. And sort of a backward glance, how you can see it in operation yourself, is the fact of how many areas, all right, how many? I don't know. How many areas there are in life, rhetorically, that do not meet their self-proclaimed aims. The ones we mentioned, the two apparent extremes to ordinary views, would be religion and psychiatry, all forms of psychiatric treatment, all forms of personality, non-somatic medicinal attempts to help humanity. And by their own definition, without us attacking it, as we've already done several times, by their own definition, they will in fact be passed as being superiorly insightful about their activity, that is, a priest, a rabbi, a psychiatrist, those who will admit that we cannot predict success, we can't predict whether you'll have any help, and so by their own definition, they fail. It's just a fact. But once you see that the purpose of it is not to be cured, the purpose is not to be helped, the purpose is not to have your prayers answered, the purpose is not to be relieved of sin, the purpose is not to in some way extract subconscious traumas that your Uncle Lamar did to you when you were living in South Carolina back in 1952. That may or may not occur. Who knows? It's a hobby. But the undisputable purpose is, once you see it, is that talk is its own justification. The point is to bloody talk. I didn't really lay on it the last couple of nights, but you people who can hear this, you've got to be able to hear it on your own. It does not belie, since this is not for ordinary people at any rate, but it does not belie the fact that someone goes to a psychiatrist, an ordinary person, your mama. All right, for you people up north, your mother. Goes to church and feels better for it. Yeah. We're all in favor of that. Or your brother is still in analysis, and he says, yes, cost a lot of money, but thank God I can pay for it with food stamps. And I feel better going. That's fine, but do you understand that institutionally across the board, you already know religion and psychiatry and everything in between, education, government, everything will admit from a certain view that they have not succeeded. It's not an attack, it is a fact. They will say by their own admission that no. And the more it's in the secondary world, the more it is a fact that it passes for a form of superior intelligence and insight to admit freely that no, psychiatry is not a science, as opposed to those things would be closer to still a primary activity such as raising corn. If you go ask a farmer, what do you do? What's your job? He says, I raise corn. And you say, well, I hate to, if you've got a few minutes for philosophical speculation, and he goes, all right. Jesus. And you tried to talk to him on that kind of speculative basis about, is someone actually cured of subconscious childhood sexual traumas when so-and-so happens? Could we say they're better? Could we say they're... You don't have to do that. You say, did the corn grow this year? If he is a farmer, I'm not talking about some psychiatrist out there trying to pass himself off. If he's a farmer, you got two possibilities. He's going to say yes or no. Am I correct? But when you get into the secondary world, the singular world of man, it is in fact a form of, properly so, I'm not taking some mordant shot at it, but it is a proper form of a psychiatrist, a priest, a rabbi, an educator, a government bureaucrat, to admit, well, all right, our aim is to do so-and-so. Our aim is to increase the livability of our city. Well, how's it going since I when I came in here to interview, I had to step over 3 or 4 people out there dead or passed out, and the streets are falling apart. Yes, there's no doubt. There is no doubt we are confronted by serious problems. That passes for superior insight. That is the admission that, no, we have not reached our goal. But rather than then falling to another extreme and saying, well, life is falling apart, that people cannot fulfill their own goals, it's not true. That notwithstanding the fact that, as I said, someone might benefit, which is fine, by going to church, by pursuing a religion, by undergoing analysis, but even if they do not, to take a view that the institution itself, that the activity itself, is in some way less than operational, shows that your brain is less than operational. It shows that you're average. But at any rate, once you see that talk is the justification, if nothing else happens, people pay money rather than you taking some shot, using you generically if you were some smartass that didn't like psychiatrists, rather than laughing and saying, isn't that something? People go pay $200. And the psychiatrist will not guarantee, not only that they won't guarantee that you'll be cured, they won't even guarantee you'll be helped. And they don't bat an eye. And they ask to be paid in advance every day. And look you dead in the eye, boy, what's the world coming to? See, that shows they don't understand. If nothing else happens, if by any ordinary definition the person does not get better, much less cured, do you understand they're paying $200 for a simple reason? To go into a new place and to sit down or lay down and talk. Why would somebody pray? Why would somebody go in, if you weren't a Catholic, say? Why would somebody go in some kind of little booth and tell these intimate secrets about how bad your feet stink or something to somebody on the other side and ask gods to help you, or ask a God, make my feet unstink? Or I've been living a good life, send me down a new car. Something, and you ask the priest beforehand, or any religion, and they say, no, we cannot guarantee it. And you think, well, the person goes there and contributes money, which is just a crude way of trying to measure it. What's even more so once you see it is they continue to devote their life to it, or some amount of energy, not just money, but they go there and they pray. They go through rituals, and you could ask the person, has any of your prayers ever been answered? And the person goes, no. And if you were that same self-styled smartass, or I styled you as a smartass generically, if you did that, you could walk away and go, God almighty, humans are idiots. But you again miss the point, comparable to my notation about undergoing analysis. The people, if nothing else, if no prayer is ever answered, if they do not feel any relief of guilt for being alive, their payback is quite simple. The justification itself is they talked. What is it you people like to hear it called? It's so obvious. You know, it's like trying to look in a window in a department store and you don't see anything. And there's no reason to even mention anything about the plate glass. Because you think, what plate glass? You know, the window was empty. If nothing else, which is plenty, but if nothing else, prayer, all the rituals of religion, confession, everything, but prayer is just one it seems like you do by yourself. It's talking. It's blabbering. It's being able to yammer. In the case of ordinary people, they would say, well, I wouldn't call it yammering. I am communicating with cosmic forces. Talking. It is its own justification. It is a movement of energy that is efficiency that Toyota or Mitsubishi or General Motors back in the heydays, they can't even imagine that kind of efficiency. That as long as you're talking, energy is being moved in a way that is yet to be on this planet identified. Although everyone knows that talk is important, they do not see it as a form of energy transformation, that it is a literal movement of energy, but of a sort that is yet to be classified to be of any real importance, of any primary importance, of any inescapable importance. We were specifically, even a little more specific, the last time we were talking, we were taking note of the fact of this kind of efficiency that life is using and talked through man by having him so driven to talk about a certain thing, to being so driven to dash in spite of obvious, rational, undeniable genetic proof, knowledge that he cannot alter himself. In spite of that, he is driven to most commonly, most passionately, the more civilized you are, the more all this is true, to talk about, in spite of all that, to talk about what? How I should change, how I should improve myself. And yet by any other definition, by any other description, you can take the most educated person for a few seconds, and they will simply admit the part that I threw in using dashes as parenthetical asides in that sentence, that you say there is no way that humans, being educated, being sophisticated has nothing to do with it. There's no way humans can alter, not yet, there's no way that humans can, an individual can alter his genetic makeup, that he can alter what he is. And an educated person will say, well, you know, you're wasting my time. Everyone knows that. And of course, you would be wasting your own time if then you waited for, well, how about the rest of what you just heard? How about the rest of it? Because, well, we've been through that too many times, that the great polarized energy flow in the three-dimensional, at least the Western world right now, most of the world now, they fall back into, well, wait a minute, you're about to bring up the old division between heredity and environment. You're going to talk about whether the aspects of one's nature and the aspects of one's nurturing. And so you're saying we cannot change our nature, but we certainly can change that which has been nurtured by the environment. And of course, I still, thanks to you people, thanks to those treatments to which you subjected us recently, I am not going to point out to the ordinary world that, all right, if they're going to insist there's two things, there is environment and there's heredity, now I'm not going to point out to them again, never again, that, okay, if you want to say that, except notice this. Your environment, what you call an environment, you sir or you madam, what you're calling the environment is everybody else's heredity. No, I'm not going to do that again. I got out of that last situation without any lasting physical harm. So I leave it to you to point out to them. At any rate, they can always go back to that, wait a minute, yes, there are certain aspects of our genetic makeup that we can't change, but, and then after that it's ... blank, blank, blank. That is, we can change so-and-so. It is the most efficient, I challenge you, use of talk, use of secondary energy to have men involved with this continuing talkathon regarding the impossible. You cannot get more efficient than that. And it is, as always in a finite context, I repeat one more time, people, I guess for your ordinary I'd have to say no in quotation marks, but men know that at the basic genetic level they are inalterable. Your hormones know it. I don't care how deranged your brain is. Within certain tolerable city limits, your hormones know. Your private parts know, even if you're not being recommended for a post in the judicial system. Even the most educated know that one's certain parts of oneself seems to have their own mind. Men in the South used to have another way of putting it, which I won't say. At any rate, everyone knows it's at a silent primary level, I'll give you that. It's at a primary level, but people know, and if it's pointed out just in a direct way, people know it is undeniable, it's not open to discussion, that at the genetic level we are inalterable. But they're supposed to. That's what the mind says, but, because now it is a secondary world. And it's got to be a different situation. If it were not a situation, no one would even bother to think. Life couldn't drive you to think if, indeed, ordinary, sane, civilized people were in some way, they're not going to, and they not should be, of course, but in some way, if ordinary people were suddenly made to realize, if they suddenly accepted this, that, wait a minute, I cannot change what I think any more than I can change my DNA. any more than I can change the operations of my own endocrine system at this moment. I just can't do it. If that could be done, which it can't and it shouldn't be, if that could be done, what would happen? Well, your pituitary gland might still continue to operate, and your thyroid and all that, but I suggest your brain would go, oh. It would take a serious nap. You know, like another 20 or 30 years, they just go, hey. Be like, why am I going to print up major league tickets here to my stadium when the season's over and I was in the cellar again? But back to what I was pointing out, an efficiency that is just sans parallel is having man continue in his most common and in his most passionate form to talk about that which is an impossibility. Yes, I'll change. I can change. I should change. It is our duty to change. You don't have to be religious. You don't have to be even neurotic enough to be under analysis. If you're just a right-thinking human being, you should be attempting to improve yourself. We all know that. Other than the fact that you can't. But, well, take that off the table, of course. There's no sense wasting poor people that might ever tune this in on their TV sets. I mean, it's enough what we're doing to them, but stuff like that, be sure and get that off. Are we up to speed now? So, that is about where we left off. Now, being involved is, the human nervous system up here, there's no escape from it, is involved in each and every case in the middle of life's ordinary, sane bourgeoisie, is involved with this continual talkathon to others and to yourself. This talkathon regarding the impossibility of change. We'll call it impossibility of change in quotation marks just in case there are some ordinary people still watching this, just so that you can take it figuratively. This kind of non-stop passionate speakathon regarding doing the impossible results in, let's see, how many different things? Well, it's really 762 the last time I counted, but let's say 3. 3 things. 1, B, 3, or A, B, 3. 1, 2, C. 1, A. It assures man of an ongoing process. It, 2, it guarantees that he will continue to be in a state of non-conclusiveness. A state free, thank God, of conclusions. And 3, which is C, it assures that the promise of a future is forever kept, so that people will get up, so that men will continue to move about. Because this promise, whether you were religious and you took it, well, my Bible, my Koran, or my religion says that, yes, there is a tomorrow. Even if it's somewhere else, there is a tomorrow in another life, which is all that's just a variation of there is a tomorrow. Or else I wouldn't try to do better today. They're all tied together, but it assures this continual talk about that I can change while men know at another level that they cannot. This assures, remember number 3, it assures that the promise of tomorrow is kept since man can and must continue to say in variations. Here's the quote, I'll do it tomorrow. I figured I was going to have to explain it. How much time do we spend in warnings, caveats, and caveats? according to whether you're on the East or West Coast. This is not an attack on men's psychology. Nothing is wrong. The promise of tomorrow, the efficient use of speech is, let's take an example. A man can say, no matter what he does, no matter what little attempt he makes, or big attempt, but a man, as long as he can say, I am going to lose weight because I'm overeating, we'll assume that he considers that the reason. That is not that his thyroid went out of the room 2 years ago and never came back. But that his metabolism got hit by a train. Well, assume he attributes it, I simply eat too much, and so I'm going to stop, or I'm going to cut down. You don't have to cut down. You can, you cannot. What is important is you can say, I am going to, which is the keeping of the promise of tomorrow. Because as long as you can say, I'll cut down tomorrow. Now, of course, I could start tonight, but I haven't eaten all day. And my stomach's already making noise. Plus, I've got to go out tonight. The boss is having a little party, and it's going to look funny. I'll have to set up something at work, maybe to him. Well, hell, he won't throw a party for another year. But I can't go over there and be insulting. So, and I'm not using this example to point out that men are weak or foolish. It is simply this, that the promise of tomorrow is forever kept as long as you can talk. Because as long as you can talk, you do not have to do what you're doing now. As long as you can talk. Good. If you want to look at it another way, if you need your attention diverted, as long as the institutions can talk, which is the same thing as you, as long as the institution can talk and say, well, I'm glad you did join our church. And you say, yeah, but I've done everything. I've spent my time here, and I contributed to the building fund, and my prayers haven't been answered. And the man says, but our book, our leader, Freud, if we're in analysis, you say, I hadn't been cured yet. The promise was not immediate, but there's always the next session. There's always the next Mass. And this, again, this is not some censure of religion or psychiatry or anything. But do you understand, as long as you can talk, the promise of tomorrow is always kept. Because as long as you can talk, in a sense, it doesn't matter whether you can succeed today or not, whether you or an institution can, because you can run up and bang on the church doors. Of course, somebody might point out to you that, well, that's right. Luther's been dead so long that plagiarism doesn't apply. Plus, it's hard to copyright an action. You figure all that out if you care to. But you can bang on the church doors and say, I've contributed money and I have been a faithful follower here, and my prayer for a new Ferrari has not been answered. My warts have not moved from a conspicuous place down to my armpit. And a priest, a rabbi, a psychiatrist can say, calm down. You don't scratch up the doors. Calm down. Because, and they can say it in different ways, but here's the point. There's always tomorrow. You cannot guarantee when God's going to work. You can't guarantee when analysis is going to work. You cannot guarantee when your subconscious, all these little demons, if you're religious, or all these little subconscious traumas, if you're not, are going to finally go, oh, all right, we give up. We cannot predict when a breakthrough will happen. Okay. Is that fair enough? Now, I just did that so that you could look out if you needed to and be distracted and think, well, that's right, it's their fault. Now back to you. It's not anybody's fault. I just want you to see the connection. Back to you. You don't really have to stop eating so much today. Or if you're trying to stop drinking, you say, I'm becoming an alcoholic. I could stop tonight, but hell, I've already had one beer. I've already had a couple of drinks, so I'll start tomorrow. This is not an attack on human weakness. But do you understand, as long as you can say that, the idea of whether you succeeded or failed is operationally moot. It is. And if you have any doubt about that, I refer you one more time back out here. How do you explain the fact that otherwise sane men and women are still religious? When by its own definition, it doesn't work. Why, or even to some ordinary common views nowadays, something even more extraordinary, more precise, more scientific, such as psychiatric treatments, analysis. Why it doesn't work when it is based more upon factual, scientific knowledge than all that voodoo about religion. And by their own admission, it doesn't work. How do you explain that? Why do people still pursue it? Which is just picking out obvious examples, because you can go back to, if you can see this, why do people get up every day? Because the promise of life, I don't want any of you to strangle on me using religion and psychiatry, the promise of life. Why do you get up every day? Now, if I insisted, if I said, well, there's a prize if you'll answer, your brain would answer, but remember this, your brain doesn't get you up in the morning. I hate to tell you, it's your hormones get you up. The primary world is what awakens you. It's like you awaken, and then the secondary world has to go, oh, that's right, I'll get up, because today's payday, today's payday, today's Saturday, all right, I'll get up. Are you beginning to get a picture? This is it. It's talk is its own justification. Because if we took the example, you seem to finally hit a nerve. If we took, your body wakes you up, and in a sense, I'm exaggerating, of course, and putting words on the non-wordy at the primary level, you simply are awakened in the same way that every morning, let us say that down right outside your house, the local beaver, or a mink, or a weasel awakens. And it doesn't ask, why am I up? It's up to pursue the three S's. It's up on the primary basis that it's alive, and the point is to stay alive another day. And it's like you awaken, you generically, it's like you awaken and you go, Jesus, why? And suddenly your brain steps in. The talking end of the nervous system, that is up to the secondary world, it jumps in is one reason why people enjoy the drug of caffeine, because it seems to make it get a little more awake, and it's almost as though your primary is up. But nowadays, your primary being up is no big deal. Well, that is, you don't have to go out and you don't have to fight. You're not out there doing the same battle as the beaver is. You don't really have to get up and go to work. Now, if you got any sense nowadays, you can get on some kind of welfare program. Somebody's going to look after you is the point. You do not have to get out and fight a primary fight each day. So it's like you wake up, and it's almost as though I know I'm exaggerating. Are you sure? Well, in some cases. And it's as though you wait there for your brain to go, oh, it's payday. Or, oh, maybe that new girl, that tall blonde that I saw applying for a job, maybe they hired her down there. It's as though your brain has to talk about something to make the rest of you get out of bed. So now, I did all that so you don't lose your place, so that you don't laugh or scoff at religion or psychiatry, because the promise of being alive is not met at the secondary level. It's not supposed to be. Because part of the purpose of things such as religion, psychiatry, culture, and all that is to give the appearance that there is some reason to live. The primary's got a reason to live. The reason for the primary to live is to live. But you ask the secondary, what's the purpose of living? Because it is not rooted at the same level as the primary. And it's like hydroponics almost. Instead of the primary being part of terra firma, part of that scenario, it's like the secondary world is just almost, a cartoon. It's Disneyland, and it's like it has to constantly reassure itself why I'm here. It's why so many of you have begun to like, besides perhaps becoming deranged off on your own time, but why so many of you have begun to enjoy some of the Kyroots about seriousness. That on a revolutionary scale, only the retarded are serious. That was one from last time. Notice that, you obviously know this, that is not a primary statement. Because if I insinuate that was primarily true, then I'd be the living example of insanity. Because we're talking suicidal. But here, what is serious up here? Now, with the ordinary, you're supposed to take it serious, and that's the point. We've been through this. That's why the less serious it is, that is, the less primary it is. The more you're in things such as religion, the sillier it is, the more you have to dress up and be real fancy about it. If you're a politician, who dresses the silliest in the world? Well, it's always been religion up until now. That is, the more secondary something is, from one view, the less required it is. Nowadays that's not true, but I'm just doing all this and making hand gestures to get some exercise. Nowadays the secondary world is de rigueur. It's the only reason we're talking about speech. It's why we're around here, and some of you can now begin to see how important speech is. But then from another view, insofar as if you wanted to perform one of those self-induced frontal lobotomies with a Phillips screwdriver and a ball-peen hammer on yourself, you could fall into, I think, what is laughingly referred to as a coma. And you might live another 40 or 50 years, assuming somebody would pay the home, to pump you full of fluids. Or in fact, you can do it and still stand up on your own, or sit up if they'll pick you up and sit you there, and you're alive. You may be healthy, breathing good, your blood pressure is good, but you say, is this person human? And no, they're not. This person is either brain dead, or they could be, who knows, a divorce attorney. I don't know. An accountant. The point is, as you know, the secondary world is absolutely required now. You have got to be civilized. You have got to be part of that world. But still from a view that we can talk about enough for a person to begin to plot it out and see it themselves, from another view, the secondary world is non-essential. That is, you could primarily still survive without it. And so the less something is absolutely required, the sillier it is. The less serious it is. And so the less serious it is, the more what? The more goddamn serious you have to take it. Jesus. Thought anybody realized that? As long as the promise of tomorrow seems kept, which does not exist to the primary, a beaver, your dog, your cat, I hate to tell you, got no idea of tomorrow. The fourth dimension, if you still want to call it that, which is all right with me, is only, even now, a human phenomenon, and it's really just a semi-non. Because the primary world is not temporal. The primary world is the origins of that great song, It's Now or Never. Forget that you think Lever and Stoller, who somebody stole it from old Solo Mio. Now or never is no time. There is no time zone in that. A beaver does not think, well, I'm starving to death, but there's always tomorrow. Maybe I'll get a raise. The primary existence is now. The three S's are now. The three measurements are now. It's only talk gives the promise of tomorrow, which it should. It's only talk, that is a secondary world, that will get you out of bed if you do not have pressing primary needs. I have got to get up and go find something to eat. I am starving. My family is starving. I have literally got to get out there now and fight before my neighbors get out there. If there is not a pressing primary necessity, which, looking around nowadays in this part of the world, there is none. You can complain because you got a Volkswagen instead of a Jaguar. But the primary world is almost a moot question nowadays. It takes this. And as long as a man can talk, the promise of tomorrow always seems kept. And you can, if you're ordinary, look and blame it or peg it out there and say, well, I'm getting up because today I'm being bar mitzvahed, which is hard to explain at my age, but... Well, wait a minute. That's confusing the rituals. Or I've got to get up today because today is Christmas. Today is Easter. Today is the beginning of Russia, whatever. That you believe that there is some real reason to get up. And you can think, well, there's a reason to live because my religion says so. And you can put it out there, but it's still in here. It is only through the nervous system talking to a man is saying, I can always do it tomorrow. Whether he says that or not. That is the promise of tomorrow. But there is no tomorrow unless a man talks. Unless the nervous system has begun to talk, not just overtly to others, which it can't help, but the nervous system has been activated to the point that you can think. And if you can think, there is a sensation of tomorrow. And if there is a sensation of tomorrow, you are now part of that great irrepressible speakathon regarding the impossible. That, no, I can't change, but I'll change tomorrow. That's not what people say, but that's it. Oh, no, I can't quit drinking, but I'll quit tomorrow. No, I cannot be other than what I am, but I will tomorrow. I'll start on it first thing in the morning. And a man reminds himself intellectually, by the way, he tells himself, remember to get me up in the morning. If we're out of tape, good night.